Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here and to be inspired by a very evident creative spirit that I see all around me, among the children, the staff, and clearly the parents who brought the children to study at Oakridge. So the question is, what makes you creative or innovative? Is it something in your genes or a skill that you've learned? On a hot summer's day in 2008, two village girls, Rani and Roja, sat under a tree to escape the sun. Sensible thing to do. Rani looked at Roja and said, "Hey Roja, do you ever wonder why you feel cool or cooler sitting in the shade of a tree?" And Roja thought for a second and said, "Yeah, well, maybe it has something to do with the fact that the leaves and branches of the tree are shielding us from the sun." And the girls continued talking until the aha question popped out: would different leaves have different cooling effects? And that question led to a project titled The Cooling Effect of Leaves. And 9 months later, working with teachers from the Agastya Foundation, the girls won a very prestigious Intel Iris National Science Award, competing with the best and brightest kids from across India. Now, Rani is the daughter of a carpenter, and Roja is the daughter of a very poor small farmer. So what does this story tell you? I think it tells you the value of curiosity, the spirit of inquiry, the magic of wonder, the power of passion, staying with the problem. In fact, Einstein attributed his incredible insights to curiosity, obsession, and dogged endurance. You know, writing about Newton, the great economist John Maynard Keynes said that Newton's peculiar gift was his capacity to hold a problem in his mind for weeks on end till he saw through it. Now, the rishis of old in India used to hold problems and ideas and thoughts in their mind, not just for weeks, but months and even decades. Think of the mental energy. In fact, I remember years ago, perhaps 25 years ago, 1989, visiting what was then called Madras and calling on Mrs. Ramanujan, Janaki Amma, the wife of the great mathematician Ramanujan. And as she spoke about him with tears in her eyes, she said, for him, it was just numbers, numbers, and numbers. When she went to see him on his deathbed, all she saw was pieces of paper strewn all around the room with scribbled, abstruse mathematical formula. Ramanujan didn't just love numbers, he lived them. Think of the passion, and that's what one refers to as passion-based creativity. In 1882, the great painter Van Gogh wrote a letter to his brother Theo: "Drawing becomes more and more a passion with me." And it is a passion just like that of a sailor for the sea. Just think of that, the passion of a sailor for the sea. If you can bring it into your own life, into the way you learn, into the way you express yourself, what great things you can do. And that's the best way of releasing your own creative potential. In fact, somebody once asked the great philosopher J. Krishnamurti, "Why do you speak so much all over the world? What is it about speaking that turns you on?" And he replied with a question: why does a flower bloom? So can we learn ourselves? Can we encourage children? Can children learn to bloom spontaneously? Not because they're looking for an end or a result, but because it's wonderful in and of itself, that whole process of discovery. That's what leads you to another higher level. And that's really very important. So you can ask me, how does one make this happen in the classroom, right? And since Arjun mentioned the tippy top, which I hope a lot of you children have played around with, I decided to bring it and show it to those who might not have seen it again. and also because it's one of my favorite things to do. This tippy top is amazing. It just costs 5 rupees, or now 10 rupees after several years of inflation. You spin it, and it tips over very unexpectedly because its center of gravity is in its bottom, so when you put it on a table, it sits on its bottom, right? But when you spin it, it tips over. And you go, ah, rather like array or wow. And that's really very important because in that ah, you've stirred your curiosity. You've awakened your mind. And that's really the beginning of the creative process. And then immediately you ask, now why did that happen, or how did it happen? Because it seems so counterintuitive, unexpected. Like you see something beautiful or unexpected or even arresting, and you go, wow, how did that happen? And that process of trying to find out why that happened or how that happened is terribly important. That's the process of discovery, of questioning, of interaction, of tinkering and experimenting. And you may find an answer. It may not be the ultimate answer. You could have a series of answers, or what we call the aha effect, a series of ahas. So that's the second terribly important thing, the aha effect, the ah and the aha. The third thing is, I think, and I guess you'll agree with me, I hope you'll agree with me, you must have fun doing what you're doing. And that's the ha-ha effect. So there's the ah, the aha, and the ha-ha. Now, ask yourself, in the way you work or your typical class session, am I experiencing one of these three? 2 of them, all 3 of them? If you are, then probably you're on the road to unleashing and unlocking your creative potential. If the teacher is creating that environment, that magic that produces the ah, the aha, and ha-ha, then that teacher is probably doing a tremendous job, right? So the other day in New York, I happened to run into a math professor, since we're talking about the tippy top. And he's also an entrepreneur who teaches at Princeton University. And he'd come to raise money from a friend of mine. And during the break in the conversation, he and I interacted, and I showed him the tippy top. And he was fascinated because he's a math guy. And he said, can I take it? And I said, by all means, it just costs 5 rupees, I'll give it to you. He took it home and sent me an email the next morning saying, I spent the whole night playing with the tippy top. And you know what? I think I cracked it. I know why it happens. I understood the math of it, the physics of it. So I said, wonderful, and replied with an email with a picture of 2 of the world's greatest scientists, Wolfgang Pauli and Niels Bohr. In 1951, looking at the tippy top spinning, bent over in their suits, and you could see from their expression that they're trying to figure out, now why is that happening? And with a big smile on their face. So he replied to me saying, wonderful picture. I better go back to the drawing board. Maybe it's not that easy. Okay? So that's the whole spirit of creativity, of curiosity, of trying to find out why something happens or how something happens. And it's not just science. You know, it is in the arts, in the humanities. It's not just about the external world. I grew up in a school, Rishi Valley, and every year Krishnamurti would come and talk. And a lot of us young kids would go off to sleep, right? But he would talk about curiosity and creativity into the interior, the science of the interior, if you like, about how do you bring about transformation from within by exploring your own self. That's something that's written about in the Upanishads, and India has a long tradition of it. So curiosity and creativity work both in the external world and the internal world. And when these 2 worlds come together, the science of the exterior and the science of the interior, you have a revolutionary mind. You know, You have a mind with great wisdom and insight. So it's not just about curiosity into the external world. And curiosity is terribly important, but as we all know, curiosity alone doesn't ensure action. In today's world in India, we need to act. Whether it's Swachh Bharat or anything else, we need to make it happen. So how do you make it happen? When curiosity is combined with confidence, and that's what we saw on stage, those little girls and the performers, you have right action. Curiosity alone can lead to no action. With confidence, you can get positive, strong action. And when you combine that with humanity, you get right action, revolutionary action, transformative action. So creativity, in a full sense, must be combined with action to create a better society. Now, you can be creative in two ways. You can sing and dance, like the girls showed us. But singing and dancing means self-expression, whatever you do. Or you can create an environment where singers and dancers like Rani and Roja or a young Ramanujan can flourish. Now, what Oakridge, I think, is doing is trying to create an environment where singers and dancers can flourish, where children and teachers can express themselves fearlessly and bring out their innate creativity. That's what India really needs to do at a mass level. That's what, in a very small way, the foundation that I head, Agastya, is trying to do. We've got mobile science labs, science centers across India, and we are trying to spread this mantra of creativity, of experimentation, of hands-on experiential learning. So I'd like to end my speech by saying, find your own tippy top, whatever it is. Experiment, forge new paths, raise your vision, go where no one's gone before, and make history. Years ago, thank you. Years ago, somebody, a Jain Muni, went up to India's first Home Minister, Sardar Patel, and said, Mr. Patel, you've led such an incredible life, leading India's independence movement with Gandhi and Nehru. Why don't you write a book about it? And you know what he said? He said, we don't write history, we make history. Thank you.